Hey guys, Dr. Dex here. Thanks for coming to our channel and watching it. We encourage you to click that subscribe button, so please do so. Today, we're talking about climate-specific deck building strategies and things you may need to know about when you're building a deck in particular areas. To kick this video off, we're gonna start with one place that I know quite well, and if it's a wet area that you're in, there's some things you might wanna consider. It's not wet today, but most of the time it is. So where we come from, there's a lot of mildew, rot, and decay. So you're gonna make sure you're gonna wanna use at least pressure treated lumber. We've been going to a lot of alternatives like aluminum or steel framing as well. It does cost more, but the longevity of it is superior to conventional lumber. At the minimum, you got to use pressure treated, and you might even want to protect the tops of those joists and the tops of those beams with some waterproof membrane tape. We use a product called G-tape to protect that keeps the moisture from soaking in. And the reason we like to protect the tops of the framing, like surface blocking, tops of joists and beams, is because every time you penetrate the top of a member, there's a potential for water intrusion. So if you seal that area up, so like when a screw goes in through the tape, it's self-sealing so that the water and moisture can't penetrate. The first place on joists that rot away in a wet environment are in between the deck boards, where the water sits on top of the joist and is just continually absorbing into the framing, or sediment gets in between the deck boards and sits there, and it stays wet longer than if it wasn't there. So it ferments, rots, decays, and that kind of thing. So from day one, you're against the clock if you're not protecting the tops of the joist. If you do protect them, you're gonna get a lot longer life out of that framing system. Another thing that we see around our area are earthquakes. So earthquakes, we have minor ones all the time. Occasionally we get a little bit more of a shaker, and then we've actually had some that were registered quite high on the Richter scale, and lots of structural damage and retrofitting had to be done, mostly on buildings, things that were older. But when we're building to our region, we have to add a few extra parts and pieces, maybe some straps, maybe some hardware, maybe some additional bracing for earthquake compliance or seismic loads and that kind of thing. So the best way to figure that out is to check with your local building department or get a structural engineer involved. They know the math, they know what's required for your location, which also could be your soil conditions. Now all over, it doesn't matter if you're wet, seismic, earthquake, hot, cold, snow, whatever, your soil conditions can be an important factor in figuring that out. Your local structural engineer can look up where those soil conditions might be different. We have lots of different soil conditions in our local region. So just because I'm building in one city doesn't mean the soil conditions are going to be the same in the next one. So knowing that information can help you size your footings so that the base or the foundation of your deck will be properly placed inside the soil. And recently, if you've heard about the fires in California, that's going to be a huge topic. I feel like my premonition is going to be that this is going to become a hot topic for many, many years. I don't think a lot of these homes are going to be able to be rebuilt unless they're going to be fire resistant. So to do that on a deck, you're going to want to build with either fire resistant lumber, which I know they have a lot of that in California because some jurisdictions already require you to use fire-resistant lumber, but a better option would be steel or aluminum. So I'm gonna go with aluminum, and we're gonna be using a Class A fire-rated board like AZEK to keep the fire danger down as much as possible. So a Class A fire-rated board, I saw some samples on a test video, and the Class A boards, they were self-extinguishing, which is a really important thing when you have fire that's trying to spread, but you have a self-extinguishing deck board that's gonna help keep the deck from catching on fire, which if the deck catches on fire, then your house is gonna catch on fire next. So definitely in a fire-prone or mountainous area or really dry climates, building with fire-resistant materials, in my opinion, is the only way to do it. You're gonna pay more for that. It's gonna cost you a little bit more, but that's okay because your deck won't burn down. And while we're on that topic, if you're in a sandy area or a desert area, you might wanna choose materials that can withstand some grit, I think that the PVCs and the recycled plastic composites and that kind of thing are a good option for you, or some kind of a tropical hardwood that you can use that will take the abuse and that material won't grind into the board. So if you use a softwood like cedar or a treated lumber, it's not going to last very long. It's almost like sandpaper when you're walking on it, where you're just grinding all that grit right into the deck boards. All right, and then for all you mountainous people, or people who live in the mountains, or that you have a high snow load, there's a couple things to consider as well. You might have to build to a larger pounds per square foot load, because all that snow is going to add extra weight to your deck, and that's all the way from the footings, posts, beams, joists, all the way up. So it's just something to think about. Again, you might have to check with your local jurisdiction, or possibly consult a structural engineer, because they're going to really be able to help you figure that out. We also have another video that is about types of load capacity and what they are, so definitely check that one out as well if you need to know more about how to figure out the loads for your deck. And then on the coastal regions, you have high winds, you have hurricanes and big storms. You may have a high tide surge where there's lots of seawater coming up over the seawall and things like that. I've seen local jurisdictions devastated by high surf and that kind of thing. So I don't know for those regions, that's really not my jam, but I've seen other people on the internet have to deal with it where they're just simply rebuilding what they put in. Now I know that some of these guys have used composite lumber for their frames in the beachy areas and that kind of thing, and that has held up a lot better than the pressure treated lumber that they've used in the past, where it just gets snapped or buried or whatever. The plastic lumber has done a lot better with their survival. So it's structural, it's composite, and it doesn't rot away. For those of you in the southern regions, we know you get a lot of insects, Florida, and some of those other places where there might be a lot of termites. You might consider using a tropical hardwood that insects don't like or they can't eat, or going back to those steel, aluminum, and PVC options that are just impervious to insects and that kind of thing. You can also use insect-resistant lumber. Definitely minimally use that, like a pressure-treated lumber. Make sure you're taking an end grain solution and treating all your ends so that those bugs and insects aren't trying to eat your frame away. Another thing to think about is if you're in a steep sloped area, how are you gonna get those footings in the ground? You're gonna do it a couple different ways. You're either gonna dig really deep and put in some rebar cages and pour a lot of concrete, or you might be able to possibly get away with a product called diamond pier, where you're driving metal bars into the earth through a footing. That we've done that on some steep hillsides before, and it worked out really well. You use a jackhammer and you jackhammer the steel bars in, and then it gives you a better load capacity for your frame. So it's all in the footings and the details on that for those steeper slopes. So just something to think about, that try to figure out your options for that as well. You may have to end up putting in retaining walls or some other elevated areas, and those will have to be checked and engineered as well if they're over a certain height. So definitely check with your local building department to make sure that you're doing it properly. All right, guys, so those are some climate-specific deck building strategies for you. If you got something out of this video, please don't forget to click that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. And thanks for watching this video, guys. Have a great day.